With AR, I think that the common misconception among all companies is that we're closer than we are. I think in each case, in each product I've worked on, we thought it would be faster and cheaper to ship something, and it turned out to be much harder than anybody expected. And that's because...
Welcome to a new episode of XR and AI Spotlight, the show that gives the stage to the founders and makers pushing the boundaries of XR and AI. My name is Gabriele Romagnoli, I'm your host, and I'm here today with Avi Bar-Zeev. Avi has been at the forefront of spatial computing for the past 30 years. He co-invented HoloLens in 2010, helped define Amazon Echo Frames in 2015, and he's going to share with us today his thoughts and experience from leading the experienced prototyping team for Apple Vision Pro from 2016 to 2019.
People have taken rumors and rumors of rumors and turned them into the conclusion that the product was a failure. And I don't think it was. Of course, there are things that I would change.
We discussed the mistake he has seen companies like Apple, Microsoft, and Amazon make when developing new tech.
When it comes to product definition and product design, is probably the most important thing. I've seen 3 or 4 cycles already that made the exact same mistakes around hype, mistakes around usability, accessibility. They all make the same mistakes, but we can learn
how and why the ad business is bound to die.
Advertising is such a waste of energy that even the advertisers say, we don't know if our ads are going to be successful. I would encourage any company who has the ad tech business model to be thinking of it like oil, that it is a limited thing. It is going to run out. Eventually people are going to be sick of it and it's going to get replaced.
He's measured concern about AI and what consumers, developers, policymakers, and tech companies should do to mitigate them.
There's all sorts of great uses of AI, but it has to be always working for us, for the person wearing it or the person using it, and not for somebody behind the curtain. It's so sensitive and it's so exploitive that we have to say no to the exploitive uses. We have to say it can only work for the benefit of the wearer and not for some unseen company that's using it for.
And what he thinks is the missing piece to make spatial computing a reality.
There's going to be something in between. I still think that there's some device in between a smartphone and some future XR glasses that we don't yet have that is going to be popular and important in the next 5 years. That it's not a Quest and it's not even, I think, the Apple Vision Pro.
But before we get into it, I wanted to thank our sponsor Meshy, who made this episode possible. Meshy is a real powerhouse for generating 3D assets with AI. You can start with a simple text or image prompt and get high-quality stylized 3D models in just a minute. There are 2 features that completely blew my mind. One is the ability to create stylized texture for any mesh, with or without UV. And the other is the ability to edit portions of AI-generated textures like in Midjourney in Painting. The team has been pushing continuous updates, improving significantly the geometry and texture quality, and I strongly encourage you to visit meshy.ai and check out the generous free plan. After that, make sure to use the code XRAI20 to get a 20% discount on your subscription. And now it's time to roll the title and welcome Avi under the spotlight. Avi, it is a real pleasure to have you here.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, Avi, I want to start asking you one question that probably everybody has asked you. You have worked for years at Apple on the Vision Pro. How do you feel about the final experience and how consumers have reacted to it since the release?
Those are 2 different questions, but yeah, I start with the second one. I think that I'm a little frustrated with some of the writing that's happened about it. And it sort of, people have taken rumors and rumors of rumors and turned them into the conclusion that the product was a failure. And I don't think it was. I think I actually have a much more positive view about the product than most people. Of course, there are things that I would change. It's a team effort and nobody ever gets 100% of what they want to do. And, I think that, there's things that, like I said, there's things about HoloLens that I would have done differently as well. But when it's a team effort, you do your part and everybody contributes to the end result. And hopefully it's a great thing. I think to say the praise of the team, the device actually hit the marks on what it was intended to do, right? Without listing all of the internal, anything, that the things that we hoped it would do, it does well. And the things that, so those are the things that it's good at. And what it's good at, I think, in my opinion anyway, is it's an amazing immersive experience for watching 3D movies and other 3D experiences. Best I've experienced yet. It is an amazing screen sharing experience. Now the monitor version of it is better than what I have on my desk. And then the third one, which is going to take a while to kick in for people to see, is the co-presence. It's the personas, and that one is an important feature for. Imagine had we had this before COVID, had we actually had personas working and everybody had access to them, we would have had a much different experience of the pandemic, of being able to share and be with people. So that's one I think is super important. Those are great. Now, the criticisms: is it too expensive? I think they probably should have called this the Vision Max or Vision Ultra to set expectations that this is a high-end product. This is not necessarily meant for everybody. It's one that if you can afford it, great. If not, it's okay to wait. Um, and I do think that there's things that I would have done differently about the ergonomics had I'm not even necessarily even involved in ergonomics, but I do agree I needed to get a different strap to make it work right. And it's much more comfortable now that I've fixed a few of those things with third-party products. I think that those are things that they probably could have caught in testing had the UX research team tested that more. But it is what it is. The bottom line, just to keep it short, is when it came out, I said publicly it was either going to be the Macintosh or the Lisa, right? It's the bringer of a new generation of computing either way, right? But the Lisa was too expensive and wasn't a very successful product, but it still showed the way, and the Macintosh fulfilled the promise. I think this is turning out for most people to be more like the Lisa than the Macintosh.
So there is one thing. So we have these tech giants, right, that right now are pushing this technology, providing this hardware with different degree of success or perception of receiving from the user. Now, while working at tech companies for decades, right? So what else you think right now, some of the common mistake that these tech giants make when trying to kind of like predict the user behavior and adoption? What have you learned? What is that these companies are doing?
Well, I mean, with AR, I think that the common misconception among all companies is that we're closer than we are. I think in each case, in each product I've worked on, we thought it would be faster and cheaper to ship something, and it turned out to be much harder than anybody expected. And that's because at the end of the day, the user experience requirements are just tremendously high for a successful product. You can make a headset relatively cheap, and that's possible using cell phone parts. We've seen this from other companies that you can make a $300 headset, but can you make a headset that doesn't make people sick? Can you make a headset that's light? Can you make a headset that has high enough resolution to read text? All those things turn out to be just really, really hard to do at once. And we, in the big companies, we do demos of each of the parts. We show all the parts are possible, but what's really difficult is to do them all together in a single finished product. And sometimes you have to throw one of those things off the boat because they're still just too expensive or too hard to do. And so I think that the learning is that it's going to take longer than we want. Now, there's a more broad answer to your question as well, which is what do they generally do wrong? And it's different for different companies. I mean, Microsoft relies mostly on the PMs for figuring out what the consumers are going to want. So the PM is the customer advocate. And the PMs can deceive themselves as in thinking of what people really want. So you'll see internally, you'll see documents like, this is not real, but something like, Joe the plumber loves Windows Server 3.0 because it solves all his business needs. Like, no, Joe the plumber doesn't care about tech. So they get things wrong like that. I think that Amazon, the customer advocates are the executives. And so the executives make a similar mistake, which is to think in terms of scale. They're willing to start small things and they're willing to fund them small and then grow them. But they're not great at going from the 8-person, 6-person team all the way up to a big effort. They often kill a lot of really good things along the way or don't fund them well enough. And I think Echo Frames is an example of that, of something that there's a great product that was out before the Ray-Bans. It's been out 2-3 years before the Ray-Bans, and it could have easily been the as successful as the Ray-Bans were for Meta, but they didn't push it hard enough. I think they didn't put on the gas. At Amazon, the designers are in charge of the look and feel of the product and what it should do in the user experience. And what's hard there is you don't really want to ask your customers years in advance because the customers don't really know. But you do want to ask the customers about things like ergonomics and fit and all that. And so you can't just only test on yourselves for things like that. You have to really go broad to test. And so that was something I was hoping to work on when I was there, was to be able to test more broadly on products.
And because when one thing that I've realized is that there is always this conception, and I think it's the right approach. Yeah, involve people, involve users in the testing, but then you always end up with people that ask and tell you what they would want without knowing exactly what this technology does, right?
Yeah.
So that is like, if you would have an advice, because I think this is so crucial, that everybody thinks, like you mentioned about product manager thinking that the user know what they want, but they don't really. If there is one advice that you could give when building product like this and trying to involve and have the user be part of this process and implement their own feedback, learnings, or needs, uh, how would you suggest that to be done in a better way?
It's really hard to do because users in focus groups don't always give you the best information. Like you said, they there's the old adage about if you ask people, turn of the century what they'd want, they'd say faster horses, right? I don't actually think that's what they'd say, but that's what people expect to have happened. I think the most important thing is diversity, actually. And so, especially given the election in the US, there's a lot of people rolling back their diversity programs. And I think when it comes to product definition and product design, diversity is probably the most important thing, because there's things that I won't think of as an old white guy. There's things I will not think of because they don't fit my life experience. And so I need to be part of a team, or at least hire a team, but not necessarily run it, that has inputs of people who have life experiences and head shapes and all sorts of different things, different kinds of hair. We've seen this in VR, where the people who made the head straps just didn't consider that there are people who have different kinds of hair. And some people are just not going to want to put on the straps. There's also a huge diversity of user experiences when it comes to the whole comfort issue and nauseation. And so the people who drive the products are the ones who don't get nauseated. They're like, I'm fine. But they don't realize that 75% of their customers are probably going to get sick. And so that's a thing. You need diversity in order to come at it from all the angles you need to be thinking about to get to a great product.
So you hinted at a $300 headset, right? That is good enough to provide an experience that doesn't make people sick, that is light enough, and so on. So do you think that the Quest 3S like checks all the marks? Uh, and are we at a moment where things are gonna change, or we are still not there yet?
This kind of gets us into a whole discussion of privacy as well. I think that it's I think it's a fine product. I think people worked really hard on it to get it down to the size it is. I think most of the credit, honestly, though, I would give to smartphones. 15 years of smartphone evolution caused us to have much cheaper screens, much cheaper CPUs. Qualcomm chips can be made now much more cheaply. And so all those things were necessary to be able to make a $300 headset. It would not have, it'd still be $40,000 if it weren't for smartphones. Let's put it that way, or at least a couple $1,000s in that category. The issues I have with it are much more philosophical issues. I think that I don't like the fact that it appears to be subsidized by advertising money, even if the ads aren't running on the headset yet. The money coming from this, paying the salaries of all the people who work on this, is coming from advertising, and I have a whole bunch of issues about that business model. And I don't think necessarily we had to rush to get the cheapest possible headset. I think that it was a smart strategic move by a company who wanted to try to dominate the market. So I give them kudos for being smart, but I don't know if it was the right answer if the population at large is not ready yet to make this move. We're not ready for the vision of the metaverse that Facebook was offering over the last 5 years. People are not really ready. I think that's why the pushback happened about Zuckerberg's push to the metaverse, was like, that's not the future we want, at least not now. What we want is social connections. What we want, and people are not seeing XR as being socially connecting to each other yet, because they haven't seen it. They haven't experienced how it can be, because all the devices are just not quite good enough yet. So I would ding it on that front. Like, it's great for games, it's great for exercise, but it's not the device that's going to unify people and feeling that they're connected to each other in the way it is for some people. Let's put it that way. There's people I know who are very much like that's good enough for them, but it's not good enough for me. I need something at least as good as the Vision Pro, which has all 12 cameras, captures my face in high fidelity. I mean, Facebook has also showed the codec avatars, which are great. They just can't ship them yet. They can't ship those on a Quest. If you showed me a Quest with codec avatars running on it, I actually might give you a different opinion.
So, but you're making a lot of it about hardware, about specs. I mean, not only, right? So there was an element you mentioned about how this is built upon a subsidized business model, right? That's one thing that is, of course, an element to the picture. There is another one being indeed the hardware, the feature, the quality of the screens, and so on. And one thing you haven't mentioned is the content, what you actually can do with it. Like, what's your take on it? And everybody's still mentioning we need a killer app. I disagree that we need one killer app. But what's your take? Because
Yeah,
success is going to be only dependent when all these three things, like sustainable, transparent business model, great hardware, and great content, comes all together.
I agree with you. I think that the killer app for the smartphone was the store, not any one app. It was the fact that you could have millions of apps and get exactly what you wanted, and the apps were competing with each other. So you didn't only have the company's app, but you have five different versions that all had to be really good. So the killer app for XR may also be an app store in the future. And so if you work backwards from that, then the next logical requirement is, well, you have to sell millions of units, because no developer wants to go build for an app store that only has 100,000 customers. So it's not worth their time unless they can charge $100 an app. If they have to charge $1 an app, they need millions of those out in the world. If it's somewhere in between, like with games, well, the PlayStation and the Xbox have a pretty decent business model. It's very locked in. But if the game sells for 60, 70, $80, the console sells for 400 to 600 or so dollars, the developer takes a 30% cut. That seems self-sustaining, and the AAA game developers can get in there because you've got 50, 60 million customers ready to go. Are we at 50, 60 million customers yet? No. Can games charge 60, 70, $80 for XR? No. We're not there yet. They can charge 20, $25, right? We're not at the sustainable kind of a business model yet, even for the Quest ecosystem, that it needs to be competing with consoles and to be competing with smartphones, let's say, in the future. So what is it going to take to get there? I think we still need better hardware. I think we need to get to a much higher degree of fidelity than we have. And then what people will see is one of the killer apps, as I keep always say, I repeat this a lot, is co-presence. The fact that we could do this, you and I can be in the same room, but really feel like we're in the same room together, but with full fidelity, with the facial gestures, with the talking with our hands and everything else that we might do. That has to really work well, and you still need a high-end device today to do that. So I'd say we're just not quite there yet in terms of the hardware in order to build the user experiences that we want to build. Doesn't mean we shouldn't try. It doesn't mean Facebook is wrong for trying to get up to 50 million quests out there. That's a legitimate approach for their business model. If you look at it through the lens of the business model, they're doing the right thing. But I don't think society is ready for it yet. I don't think people are generally ready. I think that there's going to be something in between. I still think that there's some device in between a smartphone and some future XR glasses that we don't yet have that is going to be popular and important in the next 5 years. That it's not a Quest, and it's not even, I think, the Apple Vision Pro, although that's a better example of the hardware that we need. But we're going to get there in stages. It's been 50 years since Ivan Sutherland's demo. I don't want to wait another 50 because I probably won't be around for another 50 years. But if it takes another 10 years, I can live with that. I hopefully I'm around 10 years.
But so you mentioned about this intermediate device, right? Something that is. How do you see it? Do you think that might be something that is closest to the Ray-Ban, that has more, let's say, the ability to add more digital content meaningfully, or is it something radically different?
I think that the Ray-Ban is a step in the right direction for that kind of a product. I think it's not sufficient, but As I've written a lot, you can either start at the high end and don't expect to sell 1 million units, but you might sell 500,000 units if you're lucky. Um, and that's kind of what Apple's done. It started at the high end, or you can start at the low end, like with Amazon Echo Frames, and try to sell many millions of those things, and solve all. There's a whole set of problems that need to get solved just in distribution, right? Just in the channels, the business channels for how do you sell these things to people. And Facebook has a pretty good head start on it. Amazon had a great head start on it. But the features that it need to go, I think, beyond what the Ray-Bans have. I think that taking pictures is compelling to some people. It might be actually a good enough reason for people to buy those glasses, but it's not a compelling all-day use kind of a feature. Like, I don't want to take pictures all day. Some people take pictures a lot. I don't take pictures all day long. And if I did have the ability to take pictures from my glasses, I would want it to be recording constantly locally so that I could actually go back in time 20 seconds. So the biggest need I have for cameras on my glasses is if I can't take out my phone fast enough to catch something that I would have missed.
Mhm.
If there was a little recording loop, and this is doable, totally doable. I think I might have even patented it somewhere, but it's expensive. It's expensive to run the RAM
Mm.
to be recording constantly. So, but that would be a killer feature, is if you could say, "Oh, I just missed that thing. Can I go back 20 seconds and see what I saw 20 seconds ago?" And that doesn't exist. The other kind of thing that doesn't exist is the dynamic tinting. That for you to wear glasses all day long, they need to be able to work indoors and outdoors, right? And if they ever do have a display, the display needs to work indoors and outdoors. And we haven't quite solved the tech yet of how are we gonna make the glasses really functional so that they work in high brightness and low brightness. So I'd say the Ray-Bans are, if you limit it to just cameras, sure, great. The other thing I think is critical, without going too long, is just the spatial audio. I think is an absolutely table stakes feature for glasses, and the spatial audio for any of these glasses is not good enough yet. It needs to be as good as the high end devices. It's good as the HoloLens, the Vision Pro. The spatial audio needs to integrate with your world perfectly, and it doesn't quite yet.
There is so much that I would like to ask a follow up on. This audio being, I think, a very important thing, because I had a conversation not long ago with Charlie Fink, and what he was saying is that, well, look, I think maybe we might not even need AR glasses. Actually, we just need audio, right? Because that's gonna be enough for to interfacing with AI. But we're gonna get there. We're gonna get. I just want to go at one thing first. You mentioned, and at least a couple of times, about this fact about co-presence, right? About being able to be present with someone else with realistic facial animation, expressions, hand tracking. I, I still keep thinking about why would people need it so much, and I
Mm.
still cannot think about being that enough of a compelling reason to then again put the headset on and replace your phone, unless there is some meaning, some activity that is done together, where being
Yeah,
there in that way is adds value. And by the way, and then I want to really hear your thoughts. It's a bit like, oh, we're gonna get in VR to look at a presentation. I think it's meaningless. I don't think it adds a lot of value.
especially a 2D presentation. Well, yeah, there's no point. I agree.
Eh,
Agreed. So totally agree with you. I do think that there are some cases in which co-presence with nothing else is still valuable. So the case of, if you want to just sit and have coffee with somebody that you care about and feel connected to them, the phone is okay, but the problem with all smartphones today is that the sound is inside your head. It's called internalized when in spatial audio terms. It's internalized. And so your brain doesn't really assign a location to the sound. The person that you're talking to doesn't really feel like they're in the room with you because the sound is in your head. So just being able to externalize the sound and put the sound in the room with you makes it more real and makes you feel more connected to that person. So even in the case of just having that conversation in audio only, no visuals, you will feel connected. Now that has some problems, because if the location that's picked for the sound happens to coincide with a cactus on your desk, you will think the cactus is talking to you. This is just the way our brains work. So you have to pick a location that isn't a cactus in order for that to work well. I've spent a lot of time on this. Believe me, I've tried many different things, and so I never say trust me, but feel free to do the same experiments I've done, and I think you'll come to the same conclusions. Uh, but you're right that mostly what you want to be able to do is do things with other people, and so on the Vision Pro to use personas, you actually use them in an app, which is like maybe it's only a whiteboarding app, but maybe it's more of a 3D app as well, and the magic comes in is once you and the other 3 or 4 people have set your location relative to that screen, you can high five each other. You feel like you're in the same space together, and it's a viscerally different feeling than a phone call, or especially a group phone call where if 2 people talk at once, you can't understand what's going on. But in spatial audio, everybody can talk at the same time, and our brains are able to interpret who's saying what. So it's just a much better experience. And when we can't be in the office and when we are isolated, I would argue had we had good co-presence before COVID, we would not be having this pain. We wouldn't have as much pain during COVID, and we wouldn't be having this go back to the office pain now. Although politically I can argue that go back to the office is a whole other thing. That it's actually much more strong arming by the companies than it is about actually being in the same place. But in any way, um, you're correct. You're correct. And the question is, I'm glad that Charlie's coming to that conclusion now as well. I had the advantage of having that same experience 15 years ago, building a high end product and then going, oh, hey, at Amazon, why don't we start with the low end and get the spatial audio to be really good? So we threw out bone conduction. Bone conduction would have been a great way to do this, but bone conduction does not do good spatial audio. It's like 70-80%. If someone can solve that, that would be a great product. Um, but you need it to be private, and you need it to be spatialized, and you need it to also understand the environment to some degree. And the echo frames were not, they were close, but they weren't quite as advanced as we needed. More important for products like that, just to fit in on style, to fit in on usability, to last all day long, so they don't have to get recharged halfway through the day. Those are the more interesting problems to solve at the low end right now. And I would worry a little bit as well if I were to go buy a pair of Ray-Bans. I would also worry a little bit as well about the business model. Again, is that what is that data going to be used for? Is all the images that I'm capturing, is that becoming part of a machine learning model somewhere? Is that being used to train some ad model on me and what I react to? I mean, there's all those issues as well that I think we have to be thinking about when we buy these things or build them.
I just wanted to have a quick break to remind you that if you're enjoying this conversation, you should definitely check out the XR AI Spotlight newsletter. By subscribing, you will get weekly interviews like this one directly in your inbox, an app or product I personally have tested and recommend, and access to a list of over 400 mixed reality apps for Quest that you can easily search and filter. Just check the first link in the show description. And now, let's get back to the show. And this is the other thing that I want to discuss, because before we get into that though, so you have been clearly saying, so we need to understand the environment where you are in, for example, and understand how the user is behaving. So that is, let's say, a layer of AI that is acting to understand the surrounding, understand the user. And of course, I pretty imagine that there is much more that goes beyond that. So how do you think that AI will and can support the development of immersive apps and experiences?
Yeah, I mean, for me, for 30 years, AI has always been a part of this. Like, I've worked with computer vision people that whole time. They weren't out raising billions of dollars for their own companies for most of that time. That's a more recent development. But AI has always been part of it. It's just a question of what do you call it? Do you call it? Most of the time, they called it machine learning. That was a much more subdued title, and now AI has gotten the attention again, and that's fine. Everything goes through these hype cycles. That's a whole other discussion. But AI, it's incredibly important for the computer to understand what we understand, as long as we do it right. And I want to be really clear. I'm not in favor of building giant AI models that exploit people. We have to do it in a way that actually uplifts people and doesn't put them out of jobs, et cetera, et cetera, although some of it's inevitable. But on the whole, we should be uplifting humanity. How do we do it is the question. And I think building AI that understands what we understand can absolutely help us. It can help us focus. It can help us get more work done. It can help us diagnostically and understand ourselves better through biofeedback and other mechanisms. There's all sorts of great uses of AI, but it has to be always working for us, for the person wearing it and the person using it, and not for somebody behind the curtain. That's when we get into trouble, is when we say, oh, it's okay for this AI to be free because someone else is going to benefit from its use. I get some benefit. No, no. It's so sensitive and it's so potentially exploitive that we have to say no to the exploitive uses. We have to say it can only work for the benefit of the wearer and not for some unseen company that's using it for.
So, and there are, when we say we, right, this is a very tricky point because it means everybody and it means nobody. So I would like to understand and have a quick conversation with you, because there are the people that are building the content, building the app. There is us, like me and you, that are actually using this, the individuals that might have an influence on our friends, family, or people in our immediate surrounding. There is another layer where there is this tech giants that needs to and wants to gather the data. I want to build new product and build better tech. And then there is policymakers, people that should try to help or understand and guide with a very little understanding of what this is, what this all is. Can we try to unpack this a little bit? And you can start wherever you want,
Yeah.
but just who and how.
All right. So I'll start with the first part of we is the people building it, right? Because we're sort of the first line of defense. Um, we're the ones who have to make the daily decisions about how do logins work and where does the button go, and accessibility questions like that, and usability, ergonomics questions. Those all come to the people working on the products early. And it isn't so much that there's some, evil mastermind telling people to make products suck and hurt people. It's more so that it's either a lack of time in the process. There's not enough time given to the thoughtfulness around ethics and usability and ergonomics, accessibility. That's usually the answer, is just not enough time put into it. And that's a place where people can push back and say, collectively say, hey, let's get this right. I'm putting my name on this product. I'm putting 5 years of my life into this thing. Yeah, you're paying me for it, and the company's going to make all the money from it, but I care about the quality of it. So let's take more time to do it right. That's something that we makers can do. And it's not hard. It's not going to take a strike. It's not going to take any kind of collective bargaining. We just have to say, every time that there's a bad decision about to happen, there's 3 or 4 of us there to say, hold on, let's rethink this and let's try to get it right. And that's what the XR Guild is about. We started this organization to try to connect people who feel the same way as we do about having principles and ethics for the products that we build. And there's a lot of people like that. There's a lot of people who really do care, and want to make the best possible thing. So that's where we start. Now, is that enough? No. There's always going to be some company who thinks they can bend the rules and get around all the generally considered good methods to do things, and the business model is going to be the main reason for that. Some company will always have a bad business model, and that's where the government needs to come in and regulate. And the XR Guild is not. We're not an advocacy org in the sense that we're not going to lobby for policy. We're not going to try to get people elected. We are going to say, what is the right way to do this? We're going to try to show by example. And then other people should come in and say, no, okay, well, these other people are not looking at the good examples. They have the good examples and they're ignoring them. And so therefore they're choosing the bad thing. So let's regulate them. And that's not for me to say, but it's for somebody in government to come and say, like, they were given a chance to do it the right way and they really chose not to. So let's come in and enforce something. And hopefully we have a society and an environment where that's considered important and serious. It may not be for a couple of years here in the US, but hopefully we get back to sanity. And the end result is we need to be thinking about the users, the customers, the humans who are going to use these things, and they're the ones who shouldn't be harmed, and they're the ones who should always be helped and improved by the technology. Like, all technology can be good or bad. All technology can be evil. It can be used for evil, or it can be used for good ends. We have to make those choices consciously, and if we don't make those choices, it sort of defaults to evil. By being not thoughtful enough, we default. I think it was St. Augustine who said that evil is the lack of good. Basically, that if you don't actively try to be good, you get evil as a result, because it's the equivalent of thoughtlessness. It's the equivalent of selfishness. So let's try to be good, and we do our best. And we're never going to be perfect, but we have to do our best.
So We have discussed about the makers. We have discussed about somehow the regulators that should come and check in when things are not going in the right direction. Um, when it's about, because there is so much that, wait, we haven't mentioned much about the company, the tech giants that have this need, right? We have hinted at this, but they want to push this revolution. They want to push these new products, this new
Yeah.
way. How, what can they do? Like how can they, for example, still bring up to the market a non-subsidized headset while keeping the business model healthy? Is that something they should stop doing instead?
I think that I would encourage yeah I would encourage any company who has the ad tech business model to be thinking of it like oil, that it is a limited thing, it is going to run out eventually, people are going to be sick of it and it's going to get replaced. So the sooner that they realize that there's such a thing as peak ad tech, and they've probably already passed it, then they should be thinking about the next business model. And I'll tell you this, Second Life, even though it never quite grew beyond 8 million people for a bunch of reasons, I think it was basically the kind of content. Second Life, according to the company, made more money per user than Facebook does. Okay, without any ads. There's no advertising whatsoever, but through a variety of economic mechanisms, which is essentially taxation built into a creator ecosystem. Um, they were more successful as a company. Now, if that could get scaled, if you could scale that to 3 billion people, Facebook would make more money than it makes today and not have to pretend to be free. Same with Google. Google's put out great utility products that lure us into the Google ecosystem. And I'm still using Google for a lot of stuff. Um, and but yet there's this ad tech model that wants to monetize me all the time. And even Google knew it was a bad thing when they started. They're like, we're going to make the text ads really small and inconspicuous. And they've done what Cory Doctorow calls enshittification since then. Everything has been making it worse for customers, in the point where you can't even tell where the ads are anymore. And it's not, they're killing their own product. They're killing search. And so can they replace it with AI? Maybe they can. Maybe that's the next thing. But it's not even necessary. Like advertising is such a waste of energy that even the advertisers say, we don't know if our ads are going to be successful. We know that only half of them ever work. We know we're wasting our money a lot of the time. So let's come up with something better. Why are we wasting our time with something so awful that doesn't work? There got to be better business models out there. Apple has proved that you could have a business, even though they do have an ad unit. We can't say they're totally pure about advertising, but they are on privacy. And they say, no, you can't use personal information for advertising. They've said no to Facebook, and Facebook got super pissed about that and wanted to make their own phone, right? So Apple makes a ton of money without having to rely on the advertising model. And there's all sorts of other criticism. You can talk about the store and everything else. People have their complaints about it, but the bottom line is Apple makes its money by selling good products. They make products that people want, even if they're more expensive in some cases. In many cases, they're products that are desirable and people will pay for. Facebook and Google could do the same thing in their own ways, and I think they could be successful. And I'd love to see that, because I do think ad tech is going to die. It's going to, if it isn't killed off by some tech like we're working on, AI is going to kill it, because AI is going to be the one suggesting the products to you in the future. AI is going to be the one who is finding things. When you say, go get me a new pair of earbuds, AI is going to be like, oh, these look really good for you. Now, we have to trust that it's acting in our own interest at that point. We should not be paying for AI that represents somebody that we can't see and it's shilling for them, because it can be incredibly manipulative when it tries to convince us of what car to buy, or what headphones to buy, or what choices to make in our life. We've seen it already suggest people kill themselves. Like it can be incredibly exploitative and manipulative. So we have to trust that that's coming from a place of serving the end customer. And if we do that, the companies can still make money. They just have to rethink the way they're doing it.
No, we have been doing a bit this analogy and parallel between this immersive and AI, and in a way the current market, right? The ad market runs on mobile, runs on the internet, and I wonder if is there some lessons that we can learn from what is happening right now, of how things have evolved. We are discussing about us, for example, seeing that the attention economy and the fact that we become more and more enslaved of these devices, and again how all this business model, all this technology has evolved. Do you think there is something there to be learned instead of looking for new answers and treating this as this is something completely different?
I think we always need to learn from history, to just to be really direct. Like, history repeats itself. The tech may change, but the same thinking happens over and over and over again in many, many cycles. So if we're not learning from that history, we're going to do exactly the same things that our forebears did. I've seen 3 or 4 cycles already that made the exact same mistakes around hype, mistakes around usability, accessibility. They all make the same mistakes, but we can learn. And I think an example of where we do learn is what, look, I think Apple, again, not speaking for them, but they saw with the success of the smartphone that people were becoming addicted to their phones. And so they said, okay, how can we, even though we can't control the apps that are built, let's build something like screen time. Let's build something that helps people self limit. And I think they can do more, because I can turn off, as an adult, I can turn off screen time. It doesn't help me that much. It helps me with my kids. But they can do more in terms of mindfulness and taking breaks and things like that than they're already doing. My watch will tell me to stand up every once in a while or to breathe. But there are many more things that they can do that will be pro-consumer, that I'm sure they're thinking about and will figure out a way to roll out. And their attitude today is they've made tons of money. Let's do right. Let's actually not just try to make all the money in the world. Let's try to do the right thing for our customer. And, regardless of what other complaints you might have, I think that's absolutely true, is that they try their best to do right by the customer, by the consumer, and to make the best possible product they can. Every company is capable of doing that. It isn't an Apple secret. You just have to really care about it and figure out when you're doing it well and when you're doing it poorly, and then fix the problems when you're doing it poorly and improve.
And so if we go back to this, right, let's look, for example, at some of the mistake that has been done with the internet, that has been done with Web 2, right? What do you think are some of the things that we could avoid? And in terms of this privacy issue, in terms
Yeah.
of accessibility, is there something that we could say, come on, guys, let's look at what just happened 10, 15, 20 years ago. Are we still going to make this mistake again?
Yeah, that's a great example, because the web, the guiding principle of the internet and the web especially, was openness. Let's make everything accessible. Let's put everything online. And we didn't think about privacy, and we didn't think about machine learning. We didn't think about what happens when somebody scrapes all that and tries to obsolete all the people whose data was scraped. Can we replace them now with a bot that does exactly what they did? Those are two ethical issues that came up later, that people, when they designed the internet, didn't really think about at all. And so now there are efforts to fix that. There are efforts around, what if we were to actually record the origin of all information? So we'd know, even if something was used in machine learning, we'd know where it came from. And so the original author could get credit or money when their thing was used. We could have an entirely different kind of economy, a creator economy, that was funded around making sure that creators get paid for their work instead of having their work be stolen. That's something we can learn from and fix this time around. And it's important to bake those things into the next generation of the internet. And I think Web3 was an attempt to do that, but it was an attempt to do it using really bad technology. The tech that people chose, in terms of blockchain, NFT, were not appropriate to the task. There are better ways to solve the same thing. Even using crypto. Crypto is not bad, but blockchain was intentionally designed to waste energy. That's bad. That's a really bad idea. And NFTs were intentionally designed to create scarcity, which is also a bad idea. We should be promoting abundance when we can, because digitally everything is abundant. We should be actually exploiting the fact that abundance is there, but still we can make sure that people get paid for their work. In fact, the more abundant my work is, the more I should get paid, because the more people wind up using it in the end of the day. So there are ways that we can fix that. But the companies that are stuck in the old ways, that are stuck in the old models, are going to fight that. They're going to try to make sure that the rules of the new internet are just like the rules of the old internet, and really prevent us from fixing these things. And the way they do that is by, they'll put their people on the standards committee and they'll drag their feet, and they'll try to make sure that we never pass any standard that changes the privacy level, or things like that. And so I just ask them to say, look, get to the future where you've already changed your business model, because it's like peak oil. It's going to run out. You're at the end. Change it, and then go back and figure out, now, how do we want to fix the internet to actually be better for customers, so that we're the best customer service, the best customer experience, versus the other companies.
So, Avi, I'm curious now because given, let's say, your past and project you're working on, I'm curious right now, what is instead exciting you about the future coming forward in the next, and I don't want to bring the 10, 15 years. I want to be something that is close, like next year, 3 years. What's, let's say, exciting you right now?
For me, the most exciting thing about AI is that it used to be that if you want to bring a product to market, you've got to build it first. You've got to build your MVP, as they called it, get it to market, and get 100,000 users giving you feedback on it before you knew if you had something good or not, and grow it very slowly. I love the fact that now with I can skip that. Not that I don't need customer validation, but that I can test a product that I want to build as if it had 100,000 users. I can see what breaks at scale. I can see what breaks in the servers. I can see what breaks in the user experience as a result of getting to a massive scale, which is where most products break, is when they get to scale. Even if it was a good idea, it may not scale well. So I can jump ahead and test that, and then come back and fix the user experience with a smaller number of users. And so I can design products in whole new ways that I couldn't have done 5 or 10 years ago, simply because I can simulate so many fake people. I'm not counting on those people having the same sensibilities as real humans. It's just that they're a good proxy for lots of people using your stuff at the same time. So that's exciting to me. And it's something I plan to spend a lot more time on, because a lot of the ideas that I've had over the years that are not ready yet, because the tech isn't ready, we're getting closer. We're getting close to the tech being ready to do the things that I've wanted to do. And now I just need to make sure that the ideas that I've had were actually good ideas. And if not, I need to go back to the drawing board and think of a dozen new ideas, which is good. That's how this all works. You throw out the bad ideas and make good ones.
I have one last thing because this so AI is gonna help it's helping us to be more productive, to come up out with more ideas, more content, right? Or more products. Now, aren't you afraid that it is also gonna be damaging? Because sometimes when I'm thinking about the fact that I have right now hard time catching up with stuff that is happening, new things that are coming in, if that is going to just get faster, like is this a good thing? Can we just be, and I'm not saying this for myself because the answer for me would be no, but can we just be happy with what we have?
Yes. Well, like the back to the idea that technology could be good or bad. We can use it for good uses or bad uses. For me, the point of simulating the technology into the future is to actually answer that exact question. What happens? For example, let's just say I was building a pager, the pager of the future, right? Not that we should be building pagers, but if let's say I was. What happens when you get a page a minute? Like, what happens when everybody's contacting you all the time? You're going to want to throw that through the window and turn off that, get rid of that device. That's a horrible thing to have. It works great when you get paged only in the most emergency case that you might need it, but if it went off all the time, you would kill it. So how do we test that scale to make sure that what we're building is actually going to be something that makes people happy? If people are happy with what they have, stick with what they have. Nobody needs to instantly adopt new things just because they're new. I think it's okay. It's okay to be Amish. It's okay to be Hasidic. Like, they choose to live in a different time period. Effectively, they've chosen, and they it's a certain date. They said, 1850. That anything after 1850, we're not going to use. We're going to use anything that was technology that existed before that, but we're not going to use anything after. Okay, that's an okay life choice to make if you're willing to live with the results. For most of us, we want to be part of a greater society and not separated out from that. And so we kind of are inundated with all the new things all the time, and the latest trends, the latest fashion. It's okay to go slow. It's okay to take your time, to not have to be a first adopter. I work on bleeding edge tech, but I am not a first adopter for most things. Like, I've had a movie screen for 20 years. So I've had a bigger TV set than most people for 20 years. That's an early adopter kind of a thing. But I don't have every headset on the market. I don't buy every new product. I haven't automated my home. Like, there's all sorts of things that I'm not an early adopter around, and it's because I wait to see whether the stuff's actually going to work or not. Let me actually test it, and if it doesn't, I'm going back to what worked before.
I thank you very much. I mean, I was a great conversation. I really enjoyed all the back and forth, and of course, you being able to share all your experience. Thank you very much, Avi.
Thank you. I had a lot of fun.
Thank you very much for listening in. If you like the show, remember to leave a rating on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or a thumbs up on YouTube. It really helps me keep doing this and shine the spotlights on the greatest founders and makers, pushing the boundaries of XR and AI. Also, make sure to check out the show page xraispotlight.com, where you can find more conversation like this one. Till next time.